So, guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren from Souvrette House in St. Moritz. But I wanted to talk today about the origins of the postcard in Switzerland, which is 150 years old. To develop a postal system was quite a challenge in Europe, obviously with various geographical features. But, there was quite a good postal system that was operating in France using the rivers. And so it was decided between France and Germany that they would develop a system where they could pass messages from one place to another. So Austria was doing this in 1869 within its own country, France in 1870. But there was a German person called Hendrik von Stephan, and he said, okay, it's great we're passing messages to people, but how can we standardize the message system? Because there were letters and, these letters got very long. All he said was, I just need to send one message and then that's it. And I want to send it cheaply. So people just discussed how this would happen. And in 1874, in Bern, in Switzerland, they sat down together and they formed the first Congress of the Postal Union. And they developed something called the carte postale. So here is item number 1, and this is an original carte postale. So this is dated 1894. So it was very early on in the origin of the postcard. And if you look carefully, you can see the carte postale Swiss, and there is a name on the front and the stamp and the date that we have from there. It was going to Canada, and on the back is the message. So if you think about how we have postcards today, we have the address and the message on the back and a pretty picture on the front. So the first postcards were very much driven by messages, and they standardized the size. In Bern, they standardized the pricing, and so it made this little postcard a very versatile product, and people were very keen to pass messages this way. So it stayed like this for a little while until someone in Zurich, who was a lithographer. So for those of you who understand about lithography, you will know that you can print many colors with lithography. And Hans Jacob Schmidt developed a photochrome process where he could layer up to 16 colors and use these to make colored images. Okay, and these are some examples right here of those. And you can see the colors really vibrant. These have been really kept very well. But it's the overlayering of the ink to create that three-dimensional picture. So, this is from the very, very early 1900s. And developed from the lithography. And the thing to note about, of course, we've gone from the brown paper of 1894 to this sort of whitish paper with a border. So we have a photographic image and a border. Because what happened with the printing is they printed off several at a time, and they couldn't actually match up each time the border. So they developed this white border, so if there was some error in the cutting process, there would always be something away from the image. So that was quite a clever process. There was still a lot of work to be done as far as the postcard was developing. I think they called this process the photo globe, and it won an award in Paris in 1900 for this kind of printing process. It looks really modern when you can see that on the screen. The other thing that often these early postcards, and here's another one, but this one's in black and white, and this shows Mutterach, which is not very far away from here, the glacier of Mutterach. And when St. Moritz was opened, the Benina Express came through about 1911. Souvrette House Hotel, where I'm doing this broadcast from tonight, was built in 1912. Mutterach Glacier was one of the places people went, and the train station stopped right at the base of the glacier. So you could walk, literally get off the train, here's the hotel, here's the train, you cross the bridge, and the glacier was almost literally at the end of the little pass there. Now, if you want to walk to Mutterach Glacier, which I've done a couple of times, it took me nearly an hour and a half to really get to the base of the glacier. It's moved so far, and it's very dangerous because the ground is very unstable there. So this is a time capsule, again, when you're looking at these early postcards. This one is from, as you can see, they've now gone to the double printing, and this is from 1927. And I also have a very early postcard of Lucerne as well. And some of you will recognize the scene. This is Pilatus, Mount Pilatus behind. And there was a very famous painting by Turner, who also painted this particular scene with this very old bridge and this little tower. So really, that is the origin of the postcard. They were just seen as little small sketches. By about 1911, it had gone crazy. The Americans had picked up the concept, and postcards became huge in America. Of course, they had the Kodak camera started to be developed. Everybody wanted to take photographs and make postcards. So it grew from there, and there was a massive following from that point onwards. These are early postcards which I have blown up and printed them out using my photography into painting methods. And you can see Soretta House being built in 1912, and then now it's a little later, and the whole hotel is constructed. But the working conditions and the snow and everything like that. But these are also great things to print as well. They're a lot of fun, to be able to take something quite small and expand it into something large like this. So I thought what I'd do as an exercise or as a little experience is to perhaps create a montage of images from Soretta House from this particular period, and develop the idea of a journey and using images that were based on the postcard. So now here we have the image that's been printed out using the transfer photographic method, and I'm just sort of playing around now with the edges of the image, just like how they were experimenting in the early days with the lithography. So let's turn the page. I've printed out a map here of St. Moritz. This is a very early map. This is from about the 1940s, and it shows St. Moritz here and the passes. I think I showed some other maps a little earlier on in the week. But it's quite nice to build from these sort of journals and stories, something that sort of tells us, gives us a sense of place. And sometimes I start, where do you start? Well, the nice thing about a map is it can sit in the background and just give you a foil for things to build on the surface. I thought perhaps something that was quite nice would be to work the letraset letters, numbers, that related to the postcode of Soretta House. And that has a lot of meaning. So it's 7500. So these are very easy to use, and you just use them like this. So you just press the letter down that you want. So 7, come along, 5. So it's great. You can just transfer the numbers and letters like this, and 00. So I can put 00 here. And like so, transfer those numbers. So it's nice. You can do all sorts of things with that. 7500. It means something to the people living here and in the hotel, and that's just really, as I say, it's part of the memories of this place. I have all sorts of other images that I can include in this montage, like little elements, from the hotel, which are also nice. So I've just placed that there for the moment. The other thing that's also good to use, I've just sort of made this into a concertina book, actually. You can do all sorts of things with this shape. And how I've bound the concertina book together is I've been using a linen tape. Now you can buy this as well. This is great stuff. It's used for bookbinding. And then it has a very sticky back, which you can use as the spine, yeah? So we could, for example, just open the back of this concertina book And, we have made, we've got these various postcards. If we wanted to make this as a time capsule and keep some of these things together. I've made something here. So this is a Turkish map fold. I love it. What I thought was quite nice about this is, I could fix this into my journal, and then I could pop in, some of those postcards. So if I wanted to keep something like this, a Turkish map fold is brilliant, because I can just, and I think this is probably what they would develop for as well. If you're working in the field, you could store vital information in here, like so. And they've got several other little pockets you can use as well. So it was a way of just keeping your information together. So I'm going to pop that in. I can glue that in later. I've got more work to do on this journal, but that'll be something I add in here like so. And then I can carry on working on the front. So those are nice things to add into your little journals as well. So let's get back to the front of the book. Now, we have been looking at Kurt Zwitter's and Mozart, and the idea of just, found objects fitting into some sort of pictorial plane. So there's a sense of in and out with his work. And I quite like that multi-dimensionality with using quite neutral colours, but then he's got some very punchy greens and blues. So, I might keep to a theme. One of the other little things too that I quite like is if you've been just cutting and snipping, it's quite nice to keep some of these little things like this. And I might just use the glue stick for that and pop that in. It's partly because it's an interesting shape and it's an interesting colour. So we'll just pop that in here, and it kind of relates to what we're talking about today. If you need to, of course, you can use your roller to just flatten that. Now I'm using Fabriano 650 GSM again because it's so absorbent, and it does hold inks and glue very easily. One of the things that I really like are these old time cards. And it's quite nice to, sort of think that, the hotel, everything like that has been built up by hand. Everything was made by hand. Look back at 1911. People just, you just couldn't go to a shop and buy everything. If you wanted a certain sort of a screw or something like that, you actually had to make it. And this is an old time card. I'm going to pop that into this journal. Just as a record and a memory of all the people that have worked in the hotel and probably had to clock in and clock out in the old days as we did. Now it's all on computer, so we don't get that same feeling of putting a punch card in and off we go, but it is part of that story. Another idea too that I wanted to add in is the mountain. These mountains are so strong, and as I said before, it's quite nice to have something perhaps torn a bit more irregular rather than just always with a pair of scissors. But you're very aware when you come up here of the mountains, and as Giacometti said, mountains, everyone has their shape, and if you want to go to Giacometti's house, St. Moritz is a great place to start because you can take the bus to Stampa where he lived. And there's a fantastic little museum there, and you can see the whole Giacometti family. They were all artists, painters, sculptors. Even his sister was a very talented artist, and you can go and see some of their work. I'm very aware of these mountains and the shape of the mountain, and what's happening here now is, the shape of the mountain is starting to follow the shape of the map. Okay, so we have this little dialogue, this little rhythm coming through, and it's quite nice to sometimes follow that through with something. So I might create even more of a mountain shape, just thinking of what that is. So I might drag a line across like that just to connect the dots, as it were. I'm still thinking about posting and postal airmail, and it's quite a nice thing sometimes to just include on the edge of your work a little boundary, a little edge. It stops your eye sort of just wandering off, And you know, it's quite nice sometimes to have these little snippets of washi tape just popped on the edge there, so it just leads to a nice boundary of the idea really of the postal system. So this is just very, very thin tape. But we're starting to see a sort of a colour family also, you know, starting to develop, and with the linen as well. So that's quite a nice thing to pop on there. We've been making different things as well. We've been doing gel transfers, but I also have an acrylic skin here that Laura made. And I'd quite like to use this as well. Sort of a sense of people racing over the mountains. So I'm going to put this acrylic skin actually over the time card. So what's happening here is this mountain line is just following. So these are the mountains that sit behind the hotel. So that's quite nice. And actually that pink line now is following this line here. So that's all working really well. So if you want to stick something in like this into your journals, you probably need to use some sort of glue. So I'll probably just use matte medium in this instance. Dry off your brush a little. If you use too much water on these things, what you find is that the water just dilutes the glue. So just find that line again, move it up, so that everything is connected really. And then I'm going to use that acrylic binder to also just give it a little coat like this, just to make sure that it's all safe and secure. In the sort of, I think this is the 1935, this is actually where the map came from. So this is a Reisekarta, and it's a very, very early map from 1935 of the area. The beauty of this map is not just names and places, but also the geology. So it gives you quite a few little details about how high places are and how things flow into the river. I mean, that's just from a scientific point of view, but I think from an artistic point of view also, that these lines and patterns are actually really interesting. You could transfer these drawings into your work as well. They just look quite unusual. Of course, the cover on this is quite stunning as well, with the idea of these massive bridges being built. And the train travelling above. The composition of this is fascinating, isn't it? Because we have this very strong vertical down the side, mirrored by these other verticals. We have this tree here, which stops your eye going out of the page, but this diagonal division, which is just helping to create a dynamic and interesting space. So we see through these arches, but this is just creating a lot of energy. So yeah, these early posters and things are fascinating to look at. This is the map I've been using right here, and this shows you all the early train lines that were there in the 1930s. Okay, so that's a little bit about that map, and that's what we used underneath here. I'm going to add a few more little bits and pieces. It'd be quite nice to sort of add some of our old stamps that we've been collecting. And, you know, I might just use something a little yellowy orange. I think the colour will look quite nice in here. So it's quite, it sort of feels, these are all modern postcard sizes. So, you know, it kind of relates to having something like that. And again, you can see with the Fabriana paper, that glue just sucks up the glue and holds that. I'm a bit aware that this is a little wet. So what I can do here is just put a bit of greaseproof paper. So I'll just put this in here just so I can protect it and turn the page without gluing the whole thing together. So I can add, I can add more pages to this if I want. You know, I have the beautiful old cover there of the hotel where they've just described the mountains behind. That's Pitsner, Pitzulia. And there's a lovely little gletscher in there still, which is nice to see. So I could easily add another page to this if I wanted to somewhere later on, or I could add that as a backing page on here like so. So I could do that as well. So just a few more things that we can add in. It's quite nice to look at your balance of line and shape. as well. Just treat these sort of things as a very interesting backdrop to things going on. And you know, we also have some very colourful posts. This one is from 1912. So that's probably how people sort of envisaged St. Moritz back in 1912. But when you come up here, you actually can't believe this is possible. But the last few days, we've been watching the light come across the mountains, and it's bright orange and pink. And it just shines like this. It just shines just where it catches the light, and then it's quite a cool colour behind with these beautiful lakes. So we can also include things like that. And if I wanted to too, you know, I could also have more pockets as well if I wanted to add. Say I wanted to add that, but I didn't want to stick it in. It's quite a nice idea. Just pop that into a little bag like so. And I can include that in my little journal. Okay. So, and there's this lovely little symbol as well. I quite like that. You know, I could easily pop that in there. And I'm going to think about that because I like the correlation between the symbol of St. Moritz and the stamp. So, you know, that's a fun little thing as well. So this is the origin of the postcard and its relationship to Switzerland. And I hope that was an interesting session for you. And, you know, when you're on holiday, you might look at making a journal like this, but having some knowledge of the history of the postcard just makes this so much more powerful. Okay, thanks for joining me tonight. It's Nikki Heenan, artist, reporting from Souvretta House in Switzerland.